What's up, Taiwan? I'm Sandy Chi with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. We begin with growing concerns in Taiwan over what massive budget cuts will mean for the country's military. The opposition-led decision to slash budgets across the board comes as China ramps up its military activity around Taiwan. Defense officials say the move could have serious repercussions, as Tiffany Wong now reports.
Taiwan President Lai Ching-te observed defensive military drills near an airstrip in the southeast and visited nearby naval facilities, where he thanked service members for protecting the country.
因为有你们坚守岗位，国人才能安心。
His comments come after Taiwan's two opposition parties pushed record-high budget cuts through the legislature, and as China ramps up air and sea incursions around Taiwan to intimidate it.
中国从未放弃对台湾的野心。 近年更是强化灰色地带侵扰，唯有仰赖自身实力的和平，才是真和平。我也希望朝野能够持续合作，支持国防预算。
The overall 7% budget cuts include a freeze on half of the expected $61 million in funding earmarked for Taiwan's domestic submarine program, as well as funding for its drone testing facility. Opposition Kuomintang legislators were concerned about delays with the project and questioned the necessity for the submarines in Taiwan's overall defense strategy, which is focused on small, mobile units engaging in asymmetric warfare. The budget now requires that the first domestically produced submarine, unveiled in September 2023, complete operation and quality tests before the frozen half of the funding can be released. The Kuomintang accused the ruling party of misusing defense funds before, criticizing the Democratic Progressive Party's support of citizen defense groups like Kuma Academy, founded by DPP legislator Puma Shen, and saying they should be better spent on bolstering the armed forces.
今天你口口声声说要抗中保台，口口声声叫人民上战场，想要让人民去为你的意识形态去奋战，结果你对国军的态度是这样吗？ 难道你觉得国军不如黑熊学院吗？你觉得我们国军的弟兄不如黑熊学院的沈伯阳吗？
But the Defense Ministry is pushing back against this, saying the cuts could hinder the country's progress in defense development.
造成了国际看我们在战略型的武器捍卫自己国家决心的时候呢，一个非常大的隐忧，冻结对我的官兵情何以堪？
Adding to pressure on the government and defense ministry is the recent inauguration of U.S. President Donald Trump, who has urged Taiwan to increase its defense spending and pay for defense aid from the U.S. The U.S. has also been pushing Taiwan to develop its asymmetric warfare strategy.
不对称作战用的，比方说各种精准弹药啦，又或者是传统的一些大型载台，比方说战机、战车、火炮等等的船舰，这些东西当然是可以进一步去采购。
But more of these weapons may be hard to come by, as the military also faces a 3% cut on funding for equipment and facilities, meaning that some of its key defense infrastructure could be compromised when threats from China are high and the country's biggest unofficial ally becomes harder to please. Eason Chen and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
The Digital Affairs Ministry says undersea cables connecting Taiwan's outlying Matsu Islands to the rest of the country have been severed. The ministry says the cables are believed to have failed due to natural deterioration, with no suspicious ships detected nearby. Backup communication systems have been activated, partially restoring internet access for the island's 14,000 residents. U.S. President Donald Trump has spent his first full day in office, continuing to dismantle the work of the Biden administration. He's been targeting diversity initiatives, implementing tough new immigration rules, and says a 10% tariff on Chinese import could be in place in a matter of weeks. Rosie Greninger reports.
Dismay and despair in Tijuana, along Mexico's border with California, as people's hopes of entering the US are dashed by its newly installed president, Donald Trump, who just unveiled a raft of executive orders aimed at cracking down on immigration. On his first day in office, Trump declared a national emergency at his country's border with Mexico, claiming America's sovereignty is under attack. Illegal migrants will now be deported instead of being released in the US while they await immigration court hearings. He also ordered the shutdown of the CPB One app, which allowed migrants seeking asylum in the US to schedule appointments for processing.
Una de las tristezas más grandes de que ha tenido mi vida porque Primero porque he sufrido mucho para estar aquí donde estoy, este suelo que estoy pisando.
Following through on another campaign promise, the US president signed an executive order seeking to revoke birthright citizenship, which provided automatic citizenship for people born in the US, including undocumented migrants. It's expected these border policies could result in mass deportations. But with birthright citizenship protected by the 14th Amendment, at least 22 states have already moved to challenge the order.
Today, I'm also following through on a promise to take action if Trump violates the law and infringes on our rights, on your rights. As he did today with what is, frankly, an un-American executive order. I have one message for President Trump. I'll see you in court.
It's not the only executive order facing legal action. An American civil rights organization focused on LGBTQI+ rights is looking to sue over Trump's declaration the federal government would only recognize 2 genders. Also among his first executive orders was the reversal of climate policy, including the withdrawal from the Paris Agreement, declaring the US would drill, baby drill. He also exited the World Health Organization. And closer to home, Trump pardoned or granted clemency to around 1,500 January 6 rioters who stormed the Capitol with his encouragement in 2021. Among the hundreds already released, the former leader of the Proud Boys and many other members of right-wing militia organizations.
I feel vindicated and validated. Yes, absolutely. Of course, I haven't gotten a pardon yet. I got commutation. But I'm applying for one. I'm pretty positive I'll get one.
As Trump's executive orders are set in motion, he's touting many other changes, threatening to further sanction Russia if President Putin refuses to negotiate about ending the war in Ukraine, and signalling plans to impose a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada and fresh tariffs for Beijing.
We're talking about a tariff of 10% on China based on the fact that they're sending fentanyl to Mexico and Canada.
Amid the extensive changes to the US policy agenda, the bishop at an interfaith service of prayer in Washington made a plea for compassion directly to Trump, who was sitting in the congregation.
Let me make one final plea, Mr. President. Millions have put their trust in you. And as you told the nation yesterday, you have felt the providential hand of a loving God. In the name of our God, I ask you to have mercy upon the people in our country who are scared now.
But there are limitations to Trump's executive orders. They can still be blocked by both Congress and the courts. For now, Trump is showing no sign of slowing down, leaving many feeling uncertain across America and the globe. Ryan Wu and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
During his campaign, US President Donald Trump signaled he would start a trade war with China by slapping a 10% tariff on Chinese imports. There are also questions about how he would approach the question of Taiwan. For more on how Trump may handle US-China-Taiwan relations, Lizzie Liao spoke to Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation.
What does it mean for the U.S. to balance this unofficial relationship with Taiwan and also confront this threat from China without this escalation in the Indo-Pacific region?
Yeah. Well, first I would say Secretary Rubio knows these issues exceedingly well. He might be the best prepared Secretary of State we've ever had in this policy area. Has very clear views that are in alignment with the president's, but also knows leaders in broader Asia and other key regions very, very well. So when he's talking about the China challenge, I think most Americans agree that in terms of an external challenge to the United States, it's by far the most significant we've faced in maybe 2 generations. So Secretary Rubio has his hands full, but he is extremely knowledgeable on this. I think he's going to be pushing back by making sure that if the United States and our allies are doing all we can to protect ourselves, to thrive economically among ourselves, to increase secure supply chains and lessen dependencies on those who seek to do us harm, all of those trends lead us to a more peaceful path with regard to coexisting with the People's Republic of China. So I think that's his marching orders.
Looking at this giant, checkerboard here, what's going to be some of Trump's biggest priorities when looking at the China challenge right here?
Well, really, it comes back to energy and raw materials. They're some of our most sensitive supply chain vulnerabilities. If you're going to be a high-tech manufacturing export economy, you have to have access to rare earth materials. You have to have access to a lot of different minerals and raw materials. In recent decade or so, People's Republic of China has monopolized supply chains in some of these areas. All of the refining of these materials, whether it's petroleum products or just rare earths or other minerals, that even if we extracted them in the United States, the processing of them in many cases is in China. And so we have to do some things together with our allies to reprocess, store, and mine for these things to lessen that dependency. If we don't do that, then there's leverage that I think is insurmountable, where China feels like they have ways that can cripple us in a time of crisis, and they themselves have insulated themselves against sanctions.
And has there been a shift in President Trump's China policy, whether he's being more lenient or being more tough on him? Is there any shift because there was this kind of period in between where he wasn't in power?
Well, I've lived in the sort of U.S., China, Taiwan, Asia policy space for 35 years, and there hasn't been a day when the words of a president haven't been microanalyzed to death. But living every day on the edge of a potential Taiwan crisis, South Sea crisis, Senkaku Islands crisis, that's not where President Trump wants to be. And so we'll see whether he's able to reset that sort of chessboard. But those things are going to be going on. The first 2 days, the first 100 days are not going to be sufficient to draw conclusions. I would just end with Secretary Rubio is, I think, probably the single most reassuring signal anyone could ask for in terms of where the president's priorities are going to go. And we look to him to be a clear articulator of what matters in this U.S.-Asia relationship going forward.
That was Steve Yates, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. For the full interview, visit Zoom in Zoom Out on TaiwanPlus.com. Taiwan is gearing up to co-host the World Baseball Classic Qualifiers in February, and it's looking to keep its winning streak in international baseball going. Taiwan and the U.S. will be hosting the World Baseball Classic Qualifiers this year. The event comes after Taiwan claimed championship at the WBSC Premier 12 Baseball Tournament in Japan in 2024. With that achievement under Taiwan's belt, there are high expectations for the national team, which competes under the name Chinese-Taipei.
Well, there's so much momentum from Team Chinese-Taipei after their great showing in the Premier 12. So we think that they're going to be ready to go. We think that there's so much on the line to make it into the main tournament that Chinese-Taipei will be ready to play. But they got to be ready to play because those three other teams are going to be very formidable. So it'll be tough, but we expect them to play really well.
Why is it going to be so challenging? Because unlike the Premier 12, professional Major League players can take part in the Classic. In the first round, Team Taiwan will face off against South Africa, Spain and Nicaragua. The team will start training in February and will have warm-up matches against a team from South Korea at Taipei Dome to make sure the athletes are in peak condition for the World Baseball Classic qualifiers. Chrisma and Sani Chi for TaiwanPlus. Thanks for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, check out these scenes from the Art Shanty Project in the U.S. state of Minnesota. The annual event hosts art projects on a frozen lake for 4 weeks. I'm Sani Chi. Take care and see you next time.